My cheating wife disappeared in the middle of the company party. I found her on all fours with her AP, and I was furious. I confronted them both in anger. When I started my relationship with Kelly, I felt peace and love. She was always attentive and helped me when I needed it. Throughout our marriage, I believed we were happy. But my mistake was trusting her. Kelly's actions turned my love into a deep hatred. I felt empty and numb. Some people say that indifference is the opposite of love, but in my case, my emotions turned into a bitter anger and wind. I feel like my soul has been erased, and I know I will never be able to fully recover from the pain she caused me. If I let her know in trouble, I would hardly lift a finger to help her. I sat down with a beer in my hand and began to reminisce all the events that led to the end of my marriage. You are probably wondering what could turn a kind and loving person into a revenge machine. It all started at the company Christmas party last year. Kelly has always had a habit of dressing provocatively at these events, attracting the attention of men to her around. At first, I didn't care about it. In fact, I felt flattered to have the most desired woman in the room by my side. But that night she was wearing a dress so revealing that it left no room for imagination. I couldn't help but notice the looks of the men around me, the thoughts that went through each of their heads when they saw her. I was married to a woman who exuded sensuality with every step, and I couldn't stop wondering who she wanted to show off her stunning look to. Although I've never considered myself a man, I've always firmly believed that what's mine belongs to me alone. As long as there was no doubt about it, our relationship was strong. Before we left the house, I had a frank talk with Kelly. I warned her that I would probably attract the attention of other men. I made it clear that I expected her to treat any attempts at flirting with respect for herself and our relationship. I didn't tolerate disrespect, and my reputation as a destroyer among my martial arts peers was well deserved. Everyone knew not to mess with me. Kelly had never seen this side of me, and I hoped I never would have to see it. As we prepared to leave from home, I was overcome by a strange feeling, almost like a premonition, that something would go wrong. Why do you look so discouraged, Jake? Aren't you excited about the party? Kelly asked, giving him a seductive smile. That smile always made my body react. To be honest, I would rather skip this party this year, I replied, hoping she would understand. Oh, honey, you always have fun at these parties, she insisted as she slid a pair of thin black stockings down her legs. She convinced me that it wasn't worth being a bore. We rarely go out dancing. I need to relax and have fun. I'm almost ready. Let's go, she insisted. Her Tom was impatient, and I could feel his disappointment with my reluctance, but something didn't feel right. She was too excited for this party, and the memories of last year's fun made me doubt. I was afraid that people would drink too much and start acting irresponsibly with inappropriate behavior like unwanted touching. I had always felt uncomfortable at big parties. Ever since Gene was promoted to vice president of the company, he started hosting all the women in the office. There were rumors that he had affairs with several colleagues. Last year, I almost got into conflict with him when I realized that he was always hanging around Kelly, and it bothered me, especially the way he danced with her. Gene, the nephew of the company president, was arrogant and thought he was superior despite being married and having 2 children. He behaved inappropriately with his colleagues. I couldn't help but feel sorry for his wife. She deserved a better husband than him. In previous meetings, I witnessed him flirting shamelessly with several women, making his wife visibly uncomfortable. In the last few years, she preferred not to accompany him to these events anymore. She was an elegant and beautiful woman, and I wondered why I was still with that arrogant idiot. He may be a womanizer, but I know how to deal with him. Always remember that I am proud to be with you. I love you more than anything in this world. You know that, don't you? Said Kelly, trying to reassure me. You have no reason to worry. Yes, he may be tall, rich, and handsome, but he will never compare to you, completed Kelly, dispelling my fears. You will always be my favorite, she said, and I felt a comforting warmth in my heart. Love, as they say, is blind, and when I looked into her eyes, I realized that my destiny was sealed. She had made a decision, and it was impossible to change it. Sometimes a person needs to give in to get what they want, and at that moment I was willing to do anything as long as nothing got in the way of our passionate night. When we arrived at the party, it was already very late. The energy in the room was boiling. People were dancing, the music filled the air, and all I wanted was to be alone with Kelly and show her how much she meant to me. Well, here we go, I thought. I entered the party hoping that this strange night would pass quickly and without incident. But to my misfortune, Dean Stevens greeted me with a weak, wet, and unpleasant handshake. that felt like a handful of soggy noodles. I couldn't help but laugh when I realized how ridiculous that was, and to top it all off, he practically drooled over Kelly, completely ignoring my presence, as if I were invisible. My head was spinning with disappointment, but at the same time I couldn't help but laugh at the complete and absurd irony of the situation. I could feel the tension building up, but Kelly gave me a mischievous wink, making it clear that we were on the same wavelength. Suddenly, the night didn't seem so long as I relaxed. I started talking to other guests. Jean approached Kelly and hugged her. Couldn't resist. I felt a wave of jealousy and discomfort. Let me introduce some of our new colleagues, Jean said with a smug smile, saying going to Kelly as if she belonged to him. Without waiting for my answer, he continued acting possessive towards her. Kelly gave me a reassuring look, silently asking me to stay calm. Our mutual friend, Ed, joined the group, and we continued to mingle with the crowd. As I observed the scene in front of me, my attention was drawn to a group of men involved in a drinking game, telling exaggerated stories while their wives talked about subjects unknown to me. I pretended to join in the fun. Although I knew very well that getting drunk was not my goal, I preferred to keep my mind sharp and attentive between conversations. I glanced around looking for Kelly. I noticed that she was dancing with several men, but everything seemed innocent. Little by little, I lost track of time and realized that I couldn't wait to go home and fill my wife with caresses. It had been a few days since our last intimate night, which was unusual for us. I was happy to see her relaxing and having fun as she always said she needed. I had fulfilled my role, but now I couldn't find her anywhere. I looked everywhere, without the slightest idea of where she could be. I found her friend Pan and asked if she had seen Kelly. Pan seemed a little worried. I saw Kelly dancing with Dinha about 15 minutes ago. My heart raced. I started looking for her outside the dance hall. The muffled sound of voices led me to a small, unused conference room. Curious, I decided to investigate more closely. To my total astonishment, I heard a female voice full of passion. It was Kelly. The shock ran through my body. When I looked into the room, my worst fears were confirmed. My wife was bent over the table. I was paralyzed, unable to comprehend what I saw. They were so absorbed in each other that they didn't even notice my presence. I stood there in silence for what seemed like an eternity, until they finally turned to me. The realization of what I had just witnessed hit me like a brutal blow. "Jake, I can explain everything," she shouted, trying to compose herself. "You have nothing to say to me. You liar." I spat out the words, filled with all the bitterness I could muster. "I loved you, and this is how you repay me. It's over. It's over between us. You are no longer my wife. Look at me," I ordered her. She couldn't look into my eyes. I grabbed her by the hair and forced her to look at me. "What do you see, you despicable woman? You see the eyes of the man who loved you. These are the eyes of a lifeless soul. Today you destroyed my heart and my soul," I screamed. "Now I understand why you were so eager to come to this damn party. You refused to be intimate with me because you were saving yourself for this scoundrel." I spat out the words in disgust. Hearing this, she let out a desperate scream. "No, please let me explain," I begged Kelly. "Don't try to justify your actions," I interrupted. "You've been caught, you liar." She was terrified. She tried to speak, but the words just wouldn't come out as I continued to berate her. She just stood there with a smug smile on her face. At that moment, 3 of my friends entered the room. Pan had obviously warned Paul and Davy about the trouble that was coming. They went silent, feeling the tension growing in the room. I turned to Jean, seething with rage. "And you're nothing but trash. I should end you now. Rosny, overcome with hatred, "If you lay a finger on me, I'll put you in jail for assault and you'll lose your job as well," he replied with irritating arrogance. "Or maybe I'll teach you a lesson yourself. Your precious wife has been with me more times than you can count." He sneered with a cruel smile on his face, revealing a secret that will be hidden for too long. He bit his teeth and with hatred go to hell. At that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't just humiliate, I would make him suffer just like Kelly made me suffer. Even though he was a few inches taller than me, I knew he would try to hit me, But he had no idea what I was capable of. My anger was drowned by pain as I looked at the woman I would have once given my life, for we both knew that what she did was unforgivable. There was no room for excuses or forgiveness. Our marriage was over despite the burning desire to end it once, and for all I controlled myself, I wasn't going to spend the next 25 years in prison because of a worthless worm. You're going to pay for what you did. I looked him straight in the eye. Instead of reacting in fear, he tried to keep his pose and advanced. But I saw through his pathetic attempt at bluffing. With a quick movement, I dodged the push and landed a well-aimed punch to his stomach. While he writhed in pain, I took the opportunity to grab him by the neck and hit him repeatedly with the palm of my hand. On the first slap, he froze. His head fell back, and he fell to the ground. I lost count of how many times I hit that defenseless piece of trash who was now moaning and whimpering in front of me. Okay, please stop. Enough, he begged, showing his true cowardly nature. But that was not enough. It was not enough to punish the scoundrel who dared to cheat on me by sleeping with my wife. You took what was mine. When I'm done with you, you'll be divorced and disgraced. I'll sue you for alienation of affection, and you'll pay for the damage you caused, said Thomas. For anger, I'll also file a lawsuit against the company for your inappropriate behavior during work hours. I'll demand compensation, and you'll answer for your actions. You underestimated if a voice can carry hate. Mine certainly did. Two police officers entered the room. I looked at Kelly. I haven't forgotten about you. You betrayed a good man in your marriage. Because of this pathetic excuse for a man, you two deserve each other. So they demanded my arrest. He is out of control. Arrest him. The police officers quickly realized it was self-defense. One of the officers turned to Dave and asked what had happened. Dave replied Jake caught him with his wife and tried to attack him. That's right, officer, Jake was just defending himself, added Paul. They are lying. He attacked me and pleaded almost hysterically. The police officers turned to Kelly. She looked in shock. Her lips were moving, but no words came out. Is everything okay, ma'am? One of the officers asked. Did you witness what happened? She was sitting with her eyes full of tears, covering her face with her hands. Despite her emotional state, I felt no pity for her. The love I once felt had disappeared, sunk into the depths of my conscience. Do you want to press charges against him? The sergeant asked, pointing to Jean. It was obvious they were on my side despite Jean's swollen face. What was he? Attacked me? He's crazy. I'm telling you I didn't do anything. Jean protested. Three witnesses saw something very different. Another officer intervened. I was fully prepared for the trial. Get him out of here. The sergeant gave me an understanding look. If you need anything, don't hesitate to contact us. Just call the police station and ask for Sergeant Connor. Just for the record, I've been in your shoes. I nodded, silently thanking them for their understanding. We talked later. Jake Eddie approached. He arrived later, but understood everything right away. You have things to take care of, Dave added. Edd stared at me for a moment. Then he hugged me. Stay tight, he whispered. Before leaving, when everyone left the room, it was just the two of us. Kelly finally calmed down, but the tension hung in the air. We both knew what would happen next, and the anticipation weighed on us. A cold wave ran through my body, leaving me numb, distant. It was as if something inside me had broken, and now I was a stranger to the woman I once loved. When I looked at Kelly, her unkempt appearance filled me with rage. I didn't understand how a man could erase the woman who loved with all her heart. The thought that I could never look at her the same way again, it terrified me. Anger became my shield, protecting me from the overwhelming pain that threatened to consume me. In that moment, I made a decision. I would get revenge. The pain she caused me, I would live with her until my last breath. My world had been destroyed. My trust had been destroyed. Nothing else mattered. Grab your coat and meet me at the car now, I ordered, and walked away, unable to look into her eyes. I didn't want her to see what I was feeling. I didn't need her pity. The ceremony that would mark the end of our love and our union was imminent. The car cut through the darkness of the night. The silence said it all. We're going home, Jake, she asked. We don't have a home anymore. When you destroyed our wedding vows, you destroyed our home. Now it's just a building, a place where I once found happiness, a place where I valued my wife and trusted her, a wife who was supposed to be my partner, my ally. I confessed. My voice carried sadness. She started to cry softly. Jake, can you find it in your heart to forgive me? I will do anything to make this right. Please give me a chance. Forgive me. Forgive me. The tears were streaming down your face. Do you think I'll forget what happened today when that man told me he was with you? It destroyed me. When You chose to stay with him, you betrayed me, you broke our promises, you gave him something that was ours at that moment. Our marriage ended, years wasted, a lie. I said angrily, Jake, I want you to know I love you with all my heart. I made a terrible mistake letting him manipulate me. I got carried away by the emotion, the adrenaline. I never thought about the consequences. For me, it was like a silly child's game. But now I see the truth. Now I realize how stupid and selfish I was. Please give me a chance to make it right. I'll accept any punishment you think is fair. Just don't leave me. I can't imagine my life without you. What happened seemed insignificant before, but now it means everything to me. Kelly cried, her voice choked with despair. I gripped the steering wheel tightly. My feelings were on the verge of collapse. I needed to control myself. This, for you, was a game. It was just a sick game. You destroyed my life. That's why you say you love me, but you cheated on me. With my voice was sharp, the car started to slow down. I didn't give her a chance to answer. We've arrived, I abruptly announced. Where we are, she asked, confusion and fear written all over her face. Get out, I ordered, without giving her a choice. Reluctant, Kelly followed me to the door. Hello, Mrs. Stevens. My name is Jake Gray. I work at your husband's company. Can we talk? I asked. As soon as Dee's wife opened the door, Mrs. Stevens greeted us and invited us in. When we stepped into the house, I squeezed Kelly's hand tightly. She reminded me of the wife I once had, the woman I was about to destroy. I knew that by hurting her, I would hurt her even more. I needed to crush him and humiliate my almost ex-wife. To do so, unfortunately, I needed to hurt his innocent wife. She should have known me better. I was overcome by primal emotions that I could barely comprehend. It wouldn't be long. Mrs. Stevens, my wife, has something important to tell you. All eyes turned to Kelly. She hesitated. I squeezed her hand tighter, forcing her to speak. Finally, she confessed, my husband caught me in a compromising situation with Din at the party company. The words came out of her mouth like poison. Tell me how long this has been going on, I demanded, squeezing her hand even tighter. For a whole year, she confessed, her voice filled with shame. Today, we found a way to escape and have a real relationship. I was an idiot, and I deeply regret it, Kelly sobbed, but all we had were her words. Maybe she had several partners, or maybe her affair with Jean was more frequent than she admitted. But did it really matter? Her talent for lying had already been proven. His wife's face showed no surprise, only fury. She always knew he was unfaithful, but now, when facing the betrayal head on, she seemed fragile. So she pulled herself together. She walked up to Kelly and gave her a resounding slap across the face. Kelly staggered back, holding her face in shock and pain. Get that underscore. Out of my house. Jin's wife's voice was full of hate. When I divorce him, he'll be all yours. You worthless. She looked at Kelly like she was trash thrown on the sidewalk. Knowing that she would receive a hostile reception when she returned home gave me a little satisfaction. But it wasn't enough. I knew Kelly and I were about to. I never imagined I would live to see the day my wife would need my protection, and yet I couldn't bring myself to help her. When we got to her sister's house, I finally started talking about our divorce. Without even looking in her direction, I got straight to the point. The house will be sold. I will keep 70% of the value. Our investments will be divided equally, and each of us will keep our own pension. If you don't contest the divorce, I will not use your betrayal against you in court, so you will be spared the humiliation. I taught her that my friends would not hesitate to take revenge because they had witnessed my encounter with her lover at the company party. I will send a transcript to all your friends and relatives revealing your true identity as a liar, I said. In disgust, now the decision is in your hands. I concluded you already have the answer to that question, don't you, Kelly? She said softly, looking defeated, vulnerable, and hopeless. My revenge will last a long time, maybe even forever. I said, what are you going to do to me? Kelly asked. I understand you. You are indeed a good person who made a mistake that had serious consequences for both of us. I believe you care about me. I started out. Generally, you were a decent wife, but your selfish actions had negative consequences for many people. You tended to focus on yourself and manipulate the situation for your own benefit. I paid no attention to these traits during our marriage, but I will not make that mistake again. Your conscience will haunt you, and the realization that I will not return will bring sadness and despair. You will yearn for my forgiveness, knowing that you lost my love. I hope you carry the weight of your actions for the rest of your days, regretting what you did to yourself and me. I finished. As the car pulled up in front of your sister's house, the weight of unforgiveness fell heavily on your shoulders. You will hear from my lawyer soon. Do not come home until noon tomorrow. Stay away until then. Come back when I am not there to get the rest of your things, I said coldly. Is that it? Jake is really over. Kelly asked. Years of marriage disappeared in an instant, just like that. Goodbye, I replied with pain in my voice. With a heavy heart I said, take off your ring and give it to me now. She took it off and gave it to me. I looked at her, feeling the full weight of our broken relationship. As she got out of the car, tears were streaming down her face. I couldn't help but feel the same way as I watched her drive away. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. But even now I couldn't shake the pain. I wondered if I should show her how much she had offended me, how her actions had destroyed my world. Looking back, I realized I had lost control of myself the night I found out she had cheated. I wasn't proud of my reaction, the anger and resentment that consumed me in the months that followed. I tried to bury my pain, push the hurt away, and pretend it didn't matter. But deep down, I knew I couldn't keep this to myself forever. I needed to acknowledge the reality of our failed relationship, acknowledge the pain I had caused, and allow myself to heal. It was time to let go of the pain and begin the long process of moving on. Despite all my efforts, I couldn't shake the constant feeling of depression. My subconscious mind relentlessly bombarded me with questions I couldn't find answers to. In the months after our breakup, she had repeatedly tried to contact me. I ignored her calls and deleted them all. The messages she left, if by accident I answered the phone and heard her voice, I would quickly hang up the call. It was a defense mechanism, a way of protecting myself. Deep down, I knew I still had feelings for her, but I couldn't let her back into my life. I needed to preserve my dignity, pride, and self-respect. I didn't want to let her hurt me again. As my anger subsided, I felt more exposed and helpless. Although I continued to hold on, our relationship reached a breaking point. As soon as the divorce was finalized, she stopped all attempt at communication. What she could say to me would be a declaration of love or just a casual comment about our physical intimacy. Maybe she would admit that she had become a victim of a manipulator, or worse, yet talk about her part in his actions. It didn't matter what she said. I didn't want to hear her excuses and lies. If she was hiding the truth from me, then she was complicit in his mistakes. Watching her reaction, I could tell she truly appreciated his gestures. Kelly completed all the paperwork, but didn't show up for the last court session. To be honest, I felt relieved. I had no desire to see her again. Her absence was a sign that she had accepted our broken marriage, or just a manifestation of apathy. Her motivations remained a mystery to me. Once I knew, I understood, but now I doubted everything. My mind was spinning with memories of her devastated expression during our last encounter. Over time, this image only grew stronger, and the memories of her and her lover gradually faded. Even though I knew our relationship was built on lies, I still missed her. It hurt me to admit that I would never be able to trust her again. I was tormented by doubts. Did she really love me, or was I just a pawn in her secret plans? The thought of having been deceived made me doubt everything. How could she betray me, go like this, if her love was sincere? Because of this insecurity, I felt lost and vulnerable. I never thought I would be able to trust another woman again. I was lost, not knowing how to get rid of her presence in my life. My attempt at revenge was just a fantasy based on the hope that Kelly loved me as much as I loved her. The thought of her leaving for someone else hurt me, and I realized that I never really knew her. I was in love with the facade, the illusion of our relationship. It was all just a facade, a smoke and mirrors trick. Unanswered questions haunted me, and the sudden end of our marriage took me by surprise. A sudden bolt of lightning and a loud bang suddenly changed my life forever. In just one night, when word of my act spread, some friends called me a heartless villain, while others believed I should have subjected Kel to even more punishment and humiliation. But their opinions no longer mattered. I was no longer consumed by anger. I just floated in a sea of confusion. The past no longer held any appeal, and the future seemed uncertain. The president of the company offered me $0,000 in exchange for silence, on the condition that I would not involve their name in the scandal. He was trying to get me and his nephew out of the spotlight, away from the attention of the courts and newspapers. The president even offered me the position of vice president of Gene, but I knew I could not stay there any longer. The judging looks of my former colleagues were too much for me. Their expressions said it all: pity, contempt, and even disgust. To them, I was a helpless victim, or a fool for having let my wife cheated on me for so long. Everyone seemed to know about Kelly Jin's affair, except me. After receiving a large sum of money from Jean to avoid a lawsuit for alienation of affection, as well as my share of the equity in the house and investments. I made a conscious decision to stop looking for a job. Instead, I became addicted to alcohol to pass the time and drown the emptiness in my life. One night, while satisfying my desire in a family bar, I struck up a conversation with the bartender Fred, a man in his 50s with gray hair and a weathered face. Fred was known for his honesty and rudeness, and that was what attracted me. The knowledge of the past reflected in Fred's eyes won me over. He was the kind of guy you wanted by your side in a fight. Fred had been through it and heard it all, and his taciturn demeanor spoke volumes. I had taken Kelly to this place many times before. It was not far from home, and we both enjoyed the atmosphere. The food was delicious, and the music created a lively atmosphere. The dancing started at 8 p.m., and the last time we were there, Kelly and I danced as if time had stopped. Our eyes met in a loving gaze as we moved together across the dance floor, but as I didn't receive the betrayal hidden in her eyes, the thought that they would dance together again wouldn't leave me. Every woman who entered the room caught my attention, but I was looking for Kelly, and at the same time I was afraid of her presence. Jake, I've never seen you drink so much before. I'm worried about you, my friend. You're already on your third whiskey, and it's only been 15 minutes. I hope you don't mind my intrusion, but it seems like you have a lot on your mind, said Fred. Over the years working at the bar, I had developed my ability to listen to those who needed sympathy, added Fred. I finally told Fred about my inner problems, tired of the endless conversations that went through my head. Fred listened to my story in silence, without offering an immediate answer. Jake, your ex-wife was here recently, said Fred. Despite her usual beauty, she showed no signs of sadness. Maybe she was looking for you. There's no point in trying to understand everything, he said. She entered, accompanied by a mature gentleman who behaved as if he had royal ancestors. It was obvious that he was rich and used to satisfying his desires. She seemed indifferent, neither happy nor sad. While you were sinking into despair, she seemed carefree and cheerful. As memories of my ex overwhelmed me, I pictured her vividly, smelled her perfume, and heard her infectious laugh. Kelly was no longer the broken soul I left behind, but rather captivating and seductive. I couldn't help but wonder if she was experiencing at least some of the pain and mental anguish that consumed me after our breakup. Holding back my emotions, I fell silent and let my thoughts wander. The sadness I had been trying to suppress suddenly overwhelmed me, and I felt helpless in its power. Thankfully, Fred was by my side, offering me much-needed support. I was overwhelmed with feelings of deep pain because now it was just a memory. Fred could see how confused I was and offered me some hard truths, reminding me that I needed to accept the reality of my new circumstances. Wake up and take your life into your own hands. It's time to get your act together. Get up, face your problems, head on. The solution to your problems isn't at the bottom of the bottle. Don't waste your potential wallowing in self-pity. Start taking care of yourself, even both physically and mentally. You are capable of much more than you think. Don't let negativity get you down. Fight back, make positive changes, and keep moving forward. You deserve more than wallowing in despair. It's time to rise up and become the best version of yourself, Fred said enthusiastically. Meet a difficult woman, relentless, and make wild love with her until you can't think straight. Clear your mind and move on in life, Fred advised, acting as a friend, psychotherapist, and motivational coach. Admitting my vulnerability was difficult, but I took Fred's words to heart. I stopped drinking, I started playing sports, and got involved in casual relationships with any willing partner. It wasn't about love, and often I couldn't even remember their names, but the physical relaxation helped me regain my self-confidence. Such relationships were lifeboats that kept me from sinking, but I didn't need to just survive. I needed to feel appreciated every day. As my self-confidence grew, I began to attract more and more admirers. I realized that Kelly's actions were not my fault. Instead of blaming myself, I should have confronted the selfish behavior and her handler earlier. Her personal problems were not a burden to me. Coming to this understanding helped ease the severity of my depression. It became clear that I needed to get out of the toxic situation and leave the city far from her influence. I made a conscious effort not to think about her. Instead, I impulsively decided to buy a motorcycle, sell my possessions, and set off on a trip south with no specific destination or map to guide me. I felt the freedom of the open road. Each of my paths led me somewhere that was the most Important thing: sitting on the motorcycle, I felt liberated. It had been years since I had experienced the thrill of riding. At that moment, I threw away my corporate identity and the struggle with alcohol. I transformed myself into a modern cowboy, and the motorcycle became my faithful steed, a creature at once beautiful and strong, yet vulnerable. A motorcyclist's life depended on how he controlled the situation, because any mistake could be fatal to a motorcyclist. The road ahead mattered more than what was left behind. I rode my motorcycle carefully, knowing that my safety was in my hands. This way of thinking became the basis of my philosophy. As I rode, I felt the pulse of life, noticing subtle changes in temperature as the terrain changed and the landscape passed quickly. Was a feeling of pure pleasure, a reminder of the joy of life. In those moments, I couldn't help but wonder if there were motorcycles in heaven. Death didn't seem so terrible at that moment. The past and future had no power over me. Every mile I traveled brought a sense of peace. The wind and the hum of the engine were like a symphony to me. I passed through quaint towns with unusual names. I met sincere people and enjoyed unhealthy but satisfying food. The roads varied in quality, as did life itself. Then my journey took a new direction, and I headed west beyond Tulsa, Oklahoma. As I drove, a woman frantically screamed at me, begging me to stop. I pulled over to the side of the road and waited for her to approach me. I couldn't understand why she was alone in such a desolate area. She seemed of average height with blonde hair and an incredibly beautiful face. Tears were streaming down her cheeks, and her appearance indicated physical impact. Please help me, she sobbed. Despite her condition, messy, she was undeniably attractive. Her emerald green eyes hypnotized me, drawing me in as if they were pools of warm water. Of course. How can I help you? I asked, without understanding what I was getting myself into. After turning off the motorcycle, I heard her say, I need to get to Tulsa. My ex-boyfriend is coming to my house, threatening to hurt my mother and daughter. Do you have a cell phone? You're furious. Tom left no room for questions. I handed her my phone, and she quickly dialed the police number. Feeling relieved after the call, she said, you have been so kind, but can you take me home? I will show you the way. She was very worried so that her boyfriend would not get in front of the police. Please hurry, she said, but before I could answer, she was already sitting in the back seat of the motorcycle, clinging to me as I accelerated towards her daughter and mother. Ignoring all traffic rules, her hugs comforted me that I was needed in that moment of crisis. But I didn't even know her name. When we got to her house, I was overcome by uncertainty. What would happen if we encountered a dangerous person? We wouldn't be both in mortal danger if he was armed. But to my relief, when we arrived, the police were already on the scene. While the officers tried to handcuff the man who resisted arrest, my companion quickly got off the motorcycle and ran to the house next door. Upon noticing her presence, the handcuffed man began shouting threats, promising he would go after her and saying they couldn't keep him locked up forever. Even as he was taken away, he continued his anger. Mom, are you and Raquel okay? Asked my companion, hugging her mother tightly. At that moment, a sweet 8-year-old girl appeared and exclaimed, Mom, you came back. Jack was here and said he was going to hurt us. Why does he want to hurt me and Grandma? Mom, the girl asked, looking at me, who was standing behind her mother. At that moment, both the mother and grandmother noticed my presence, and I felt extremely uncomfortable. Please forgive me. I don't even know your name, said my companion. Jake Gray, I replied, extending my hand. This is my mother, June, and here, she said, hugging the girl, my little angel. Raquel, my name is Donna, the beautiful blonde told me. Mom, Mr. Gray was so kind of you to bring me here after Jack hit me and left me on the side of the road. I was so worried, she said to her mother, looking at her feet. He is crazy. When I said I wanted to end our relationship, I was scared for my life. But it's okay now, Donna said, smiling at me. I am glad to meet you ladies, especially you, Rachel, I said, smiling at the girl. I am glad I could help in some way. Please call me Jake. Mr. Gray, it is my father's title. I kept smiling. I apologize for the unfortunate circumstances. I am glad you stopped this man before he caused any more damage. He behaved inappropriately, said Donna. Before I could answer, Rachel intervened. Could you take me for a ride on your motorcycle? I really like motorcycles, Rachel asked, looking hopefully at her mother. She had completely forgotten about her mother's ex-boyfriend and the danger he brought to their lives. Let's go see Rachel. If your mother doesn't mind, then I don't mind either, replied Donna's mother. June held out her hand to me. and gratefully said, "Thank you, Mr. Gray. Would you like to stay for dinner? We should thank you for your kindness." I smiled and replied, "I would love to stay for dinner, June. It's been forever since I last enjoyed a home-cooked meal. I hope you've worked up an appetite. Because my mom always cooks too much," Donna said jokingly with a sparkle in her eyes. "Are you married?" Rachel asked. "No, I'm not married," I replied, bending down to her level. "Why do you want to marry me?" I asked, laughing. Raquel thought for a moment before replying, "I'm too young, but you could marry Mom." We all laughed at her innocence, feeling a little uncomfortable. "Raquel, we just met," I reminded her, smiling at her sweet suggestion. "He doesn't even know us," Donna said with a motherly concern that only she could express. "I know, but he has a motorcycle. And I like him," Raquel replied. "Well, since we've settled this, let's eat," said June. Despite having just met these people, I already felt a strong connection with them, as if I was communicating with family. Their sincerity, warmth, and care awakened my protective instincts. There was a positive energy in that family, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with Jack. He seemed dangerously out of control. I needed to know more about him. He was genuinely concerned for their well-being. Donna's stunning beauty and little Raquel's charm only made me more determined to protect them. I swore to myself that as long as I was in their lives, they would not be harmed. At that moment, I had a new sense of purpose. I couldn't help but wonder how a woman as good as Donna ended up with a guy like Jack. And then I realized that I also ended up with Kelly. It wasn't a bad choice. It can lead to a domino effect with consequences. Despite the cruel twists of fate, I realized that sometimes fate can be kind. I was lucky to cross paths with Donna. As I had faced hardships in life, I planned to find out more about her. When the time came, Jack seemed capable of causing trouble. When dinner was served, Donna and her mother, they were happy to see that. I was hungry. The food was delicious, and I devoured it like it was my last meal. I shared with them some details about my recent divorce and how I was trying to find my way in this life. They listened sympathetically as I spoke, and it seemed like they liked me too. Donna and June continued to give each other appraising looks. It was clear to me that they were trying to discover my true character. Young Rachel seemed to have already made up her mind. She sat next to me, occasionally reaching out to touch me, which brought a smile to my face and heart. I turned to Mrs. and asked how you got involved with Jack. Rachel intervened, expressing her dislike for Jack and saying that he had bullied her mother. Mrs. S. face showed a mixture of pain and shame as she realized the impact her relationship with Jack had on her daughter. At first, he was caring, kind, and supportive when I felt lonely. Although I didn't feel a deep connection with him at first, I enjoyed his company. But everything changed for the worse when he started drinking too much and controlling me, isolating me from the people I loved. I was especially worried about his relationship with Rachel. I couldn't stand his aggressive behavior anymore and decided to end the relationship. Unfortunately, when I tried to end it, he became aggressive and gave me a dangerous ultimatum. As a result, I ended up on the side of the road, becoming a victim of his manipulations and aggression. Mrs. said sadly, "I am so grateful that you showed up at the right time. Is Auntie Rachel's father?" I asked, praying for a different answer. "No. My husband Bran is Rachel's father. He died tragically in Iraq. We've been living alone for over 3 years now. I only met Jack a month ago. That's long enough for us to be in this situation," Donna calmly replied. "I recommend you go to court on Monday to get a protective order. He threatened you in the presence of the police, so a warrant should be issued automatically. This will help ensure your safety," I said. "If he comes near you or your family, he will be arrested immediately," I added. "And I'm still waiting for the opportunity to ride a motorcycle." Rachel lightened the mood with her innocent remark about wanting to ride a motorcycle. "Don't worry. I'm sure Jake will take you for a ride," Donna reassured me. "If you're done eating, go watch cartoons. I want to talk to Jake some more." Donna looked at her mother. "Sure, honey. Let's see what's on TV." June walked ahead. "See you later, Jake." "I'll see you later." Rachel happily ran away. "Your daughter is something," I said. "She is truly one of a kind. She reminds me of my husband. Rachel is my salvation." If something had happened to her, I wouldn't have been able to move on. The last few years would have been unbearable. Without her, Donna said with a sad smile. I felt her with understanding intertwining our hands. At that moment it felt like the right thing to do. It was a special moment when the warmth of her touch penetrated me, making me breathe deeper. I was drawn to her, mesmerized by her eyes. We didn't need words to establish a connection. We were lost in an indescribable understanding of each other. I felt that she was experiencing the same strong emotions that I was. It was both exciting and scary. As the day turned to night, I realized that I needed to find a place to rest. Getting up, I confessed that I was feeling anxious about the changes that were happening in my life. But before I could leave, she asked me to stay, assuring me that there was plenty of room. Raquel will stay, radiant, said Donna. When I asked if she wanted me to stay, I already knew the answer. She wanted me to be there for her so that she would feel safe and protected in my presence. You are my knight in shining armor, confessed Donna. You came to my rescue on a motorcycle and saved me. We are ready to help you until you get up, said Donna, and her smile lit up the whole room. She must have been tired. I was in a tight financial situation. Obviously, it wasn't my money she wanted. I accept your offer, she said. I couldn't help but notice that your house needs some work. I would be happy to take care of that in exchange for a roof over my head, I replied with a smile. Sure, that would be great, Jake. That would be great if you would stay with me for a while. She said, it's Friday night. Do you know somewhere we can dance? Nothing too fancy. Unfortunately, I don't have any clothes with me, I suggested. Great, I know the perfect place, she exclaimed with genuine enthusiasm. Let me dress you, added Donna, starting to size me up, comparing it to her late husband Brian. I still have his clothes. I never had the courage to get rid of them. Take whatever you like. I'll get ready. Follow me, and I'll show you where everything is. It's in the guest room. There's also a bathroom if you want to freshen up at a neighborhood bar, so you don't need to dress too fancy, said Donna. Excited, she disappeared for an hour and then reappeared. I was shocked when I saw her. She looked stunning. Donna had changed into jeans, high heels, and a tight blouse that accentuated her beauty. Pearls adorned her neck, and her hair was tied in a ponytail. She looked young, but at the same time mature and sensual. It took my breath away. You look simply stunning, I stammered, hoping my goofy smile would convey my admiration. I am a simple girl from the suburbs, she replied modestly. I couldn't help but think about how I wanted to be intimate with her. At that moment, the smile on her face told me she appreciated my feelings. I felt like I had won the lottery. I couldn't help but wonder how she would handle all the attention she was sure to attract from other men. The last time I was with an amazing woman like her, it didn't end well. She thanked me kindly and returned the compliment, saying we were a great couple. With a hint of nervousness, she asked, well, let's go. As she walked out the door, I couldn't help but feel excited for the night to come. I couldn't help but stare at her graceful figure. As we walked towards the club, my desire for her was getting harder and harder to contain. I couldn't find a single flaw in her appearance, although it was too early to confess my love. I knew I was definitely in love and captivated by her charm. The club surpassed all my expectations in size, and all eyes were on her. When we walked in, Donna didn't seem to notice her beauty, just enjoying the music and the company. A group of musicians got the crowd moving, and smiles and laughter filled the air. Donna taught me how to two-step and other country and western dances. I really enjoyed this activity and realized I had fallen in love with country music all over again. When the music stopped, I took every opportunity to hold her close, feeling a strong connection with her. I couldn't shake the feeling that this woman was meant to be in my life. I was determined to make her feel the same. When we sat down for a break and a beer, I learned more about her. Donna graduated from the University of Oklahoma and worked as a teacher. Tragically, her husband, an Army captain, died in battle. Despite the sadness in his past, Donna was kind and gracious. She politely declined other dance partners, preferring to spend her time with me. It was obvious there was a special bond between us. I realized I wanted to find out where this could lead. Having lost her husband, she believed she would never be able to love me again. I understood this feeling all too well after the end of my own marriage. Donna went to the bathroom, and I couldn't help but watch her graceful movements in the crowded room. Despite several men trying to buy her a drink or start a conversation, she remained disinterested and didn't smile once. I admired her independence. When she returned, I expressed my gratitude for her reaching out to me. Meeting her had been a turning point for me. I know it's early, but being with you is what I need, I confessed. It's like our souls have been united. I added, I feel the same way, Jake. But there's something important you need to understand about me. Any man who comes into my life needs to accept two fundamental things. First, Rachel is my everything. We are one, and the love for Brian will stay with me forever, even if he's no longer with us. Can you understand that? The man in my life needs to be willing to share Brian's memory with me. Are you strong enough to handle this? Donna asked in total seriousness. I looked down briefly, and then met her gaze again, crossing my arms. Of course, I answered sincerely. The thought of being separated from her seemed unbearable to me. I dreamed of love like hers. I understand yours. I know he was a wonderful man. I just hope you can find the strength in your heart to open yourself up to love again, I added. If I were in his shoes, that's what I would want. I said, honestly, I believe I can, Jake. The love I still have for my late husband is unique, and it holds a special place in my heart. My heart is huge, and I'm sure there will be room for even more love in it, Donna replied. Her face lit up with hope as she looked at me, wanting to make sure I was sincere and ready to support her. And Rachel, when we arrived back at her house, I turned to her at the door and met her gaze. Can I hug you? I asked, holding out my hands as I hugged her tightly. I couldn't help but inhale her intoxicating scent. I couldn't bring myself to let her go, kissing her softly and repeatedly, holding her face in my hands. You are so special, I whispered. We kissed again, this time with such force and fervor that I felt restless. That night, unable to find peace in my sleep, I lay in bed thinking about the events of the day and realizing that I no longer had a home. Donna became my refuge, the only place I wanted to go. When she quietly entered the room and joined me in bed without saying a word, I could tell she felt the same as I began to express my feelings. She gently silenced me by touching her fingers to my lips. Unable to control my desire, I began to kiss her neck. I fought my desires as hard as I could, determined to make that night unforgettable for her. Our lovemaking was gentle and intimate, and our souls connected on a deep level. As the weeks passed, the threat of Jack's impending trial loomed over us, threatening to bring him back into our lives. If he was able to get out on bail despite Donna's stoic stance, I could feel her fear of him lurking beneath the surface. Every night we sought solace in each other's arms, finding comfort in the bond we shared. Donna's gentle spirit brought out a better me, allowing me to embrace the side of myself I had neglected for so long. Our relationship was a perfect balance of give and take. She needed a provider, and I was willing to fulfill that role for her. I longed for someone to love and protect, someone worth caring about. My relationship with Kelly seemed like a distant memory, devoid of emotion. I wished her the best and hoped she would find happiness elsewhere. Donna left the room early in the morning to set a good example for Raquel. When are you going to propose to her? June asked. One morning while I was drinking coffee, I was surprised to spill some on my shirt. June turned to me while she was washing the dishes and said, if I've ever seen two people who were meant to be together, those people are you and Donna. And Raquel loves you. You know she loves you, right? I never thought we'd be so happy again. I went over to June and hugged her tightly. I love her too. And Raquel, and you too. I feel at home here, I said. We haven't known each other that long. I just don't want to rush things. I think I should tell her I love her. What do you think? I asked. She patted me comfortingly on the shoulder and left me alone in the kitchen with my thoughts. While I waited for Donna in my room, I decided to have a serious talk with her about marriage. I was sure she was the one, the right woman for me, and it was very important that she understand the meaning of the commitments we would make before exchanging vows in front of others. I wanted us to make sacred promises to each other. I decided to be more open and honest with her than I had been in my previous marriage. Suddenly, a piercing scream broke the silence. It was the owner. I knew immediately that Jack was in the house. I grabbed a 9mm glow from the drawer next to the bed that I had bought as soon as I fulfilled the Conditions of my stay in the house: I didn't want to end up unarmed in a dangerous situation in my underwear. I ran to the owner's room and found her trying to fight Jack. She was screaming my name, trying to defend herself from him. Without thinking, I put the barrel of the gun to the back of his neck. Stand up slowly, I ordered in a cold and emotionless voice. Any sudden movement, and you will die. When he stood up, his pants fell to the floor, exposing his vulnerability and my strength. At that moment, he tried to lift them, but I stopped him. Leave them there, you idiot. If you try to move again, I will kill you. I threatened the owner, called the police. Tell them that Jack broke into your house and tried to hurt you. Keep Raquel and June in the rooms, I ordered, turning to Jack. Come with me, I reluctantly commanded. He walked to the front door, his pants hindering his movement. When we got to the door, I made him kneel. He is ready to meet his end. Jack, you made a grave mistake by attacking our family. You will pay for this attack, the lady said rudely. Who are you? He stammered. I am a knight in shining armor, I answered softly. I cocked the gun, pushing it even further behind his ear, and grabbed his collar tightly. Pray, you idiot. Now you will find out what God is like. I kept him in my sights until the police arrived. He heard the sound of the trigger being cocked. I removed the magazine from the gun and showed him that there was no ammunition in the chamber. If you try to get close to the lady or her family again, the gun will be loaded. Next time, I threatened the authorities, handcuffed him, and took him away. As a reincarnation, he would face at least 10 years in prison. I doubted he would want to face me again, but if he tried, I was prepared. When the police left me, I found him standing at the door in his underwear with the gun in his hands. Donna, Raquel, and June ran up to me, with Raquel squeezing my legs and Donna and June hugging me. They all started talking at the same time, but I reassured them. He's gone, and he's not coming back. We're safe now, and I promise it will always be that way. Donna and I got married 3 months after we met. A year later, our son Brian was born, and he looked surprisingly like me. Raquel, my stepdaughter, was overjoyed to have a younger brother. Fred graciously accepted the role of Brian's godfather and has become an essential part of our family. Donna works as a teacher, and June helps us out by doing odd jobs as a nanny. We recently bought a new house, and I became the owner of a McDonald's franchise. I officially adopted Raquel, who shares my passion for motorcycles. I realized that when life takes a turn for the worse, it's important to keep moving forward. I'm content knowing that the only way to move forward is to find a new path for myself. Fred shared with me Kelly's pain, which was often discussed at the bar. Kelly's rich lover's wife caught them in bed together and caused damage. Irreparable damage to Kelly's appearance. His furious wife did not hesitate to throw an entire bottle of acetic acid in Kelly's face. In addition to damaging her facial skin, Kelly's eyeballs were also affected. I didn't want to ask Fred for details about what happened. I realized one thing: Kelly's life turned into a nightmare. Everyone has to pay for their sins, and Kelly paid for hers completely. That was today's report. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching this far. Give your like, subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. If you like this report, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.